What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. It might be we've had some good times, I think, on the show. We've had 2 shows a week for a while, but I wonder if it may be the end of an era here because I think we should do more. I was kind of putting together that I think I'd like to do more weekly series shows and maybe some like less meta pilled ones. I'd like to do some I don't know, maybe like community discussion ones where we go over some hot topics, maybe from Reddit or something. Maybe we do some like meme reviews and stuff like that. I think could be kind of fun. Let me know if you're interested in that, because I think I might try that on Wednesday. We may end up at the same time going live again and just doing some more interesting community stuff. But it's neither here nor there, because we've got an exciting topic to talk about in Hot Tub Stream. Yeah, for sure. That's what we'll get into. Because I mentioned this a little bit in my Monday live stream, but there was a weird thing that happened this week. Which was that we had a couple larger events, 80 to 100 player, kind of like pseudo major level events. And we had, I want to show you something here, chat. I want to give you a little sneak peek at what we're going to be talking about today. What are all these blue numbers right here? That's a crazy amount of blue numbers. The final results of Glasshammer Major included 6 undefeated players after 5 rounds for only 100 to begin with, 5 of whom had a draw, 4 of whom drew in the final round. That's wild. That's absolutely insane. And the same is true for some other events. Talara's GT had draws in the final round as well. Now, one thing I will point out is that all of these did use differential scoring. But I think the thing that literally everyone thought would happen is happening, where challenger cards, and I got feedback from players at ACO about this. Basically anyone who came up and talked to me about their experience at the event, I asked this question: how do you feel challenger cards are impacting your differential scoring? And basically every single person said, oh yeah, they make it so much harder to get wins in a differential scoring system. And that is not a surprise. And I don't know for sure. Obviously, we're prognosticating a little bit here that these are due to challenger cards, but I think that the likelihood that you do come up with a little blue number next to your score here, if you are playing differential scoring in Chapter Proof 2025, is astronomically more likely than it was in Prime Nexus or previous formats. And regardless of whether or not that exactly occurred here, I think that's definitely worth discussing. So, but at the very least, what I want to do is go through these technically undefeated lists and talk about exactly how they are doing. I'm on my thing here. Let me just mess with my mouse settings for a moment. I was actually like bouncing between mice last night. I have this new ergonomic mouse that Chatter suggested that I get, which is honestly phenomenal, and whoever suggested that is awesome. It's a little bit bad. It's not perfect for editing though, and it doesn't have great sensitivity, so I have to change my mouse sensitivity when I switch between mice. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But at the very least, I think it's definitely worth a discussion about these differential scoring systems and their utility in the era of challenger cards. Now, one thing I do appreciate about this event, I believe that this is the case, but I think that they just went off raw wins. So tournament points for these results, which means that the draws did have a big impact on the final scoring for this event in particular, because obviously you were ineligible to get to go 5-0 and get the top prize if you did score within 6 points of your opponent. Or within 5 points of your opponent, you have to beat them by 6 or higher in order to get that first differential point to make the result an 11-9 in the WTC scoring system. So it did impact the final placements of this event quite a bit. I did appreciate though that it does look like they are using actual wins, not raw differential score, to determine the winner. That is, I guess, kind of an interesting question in the context of looking at these results with the now closer results on your mind. I do think that a win should be worth more than simply simply the individual differential points that make it up, because one thing that many events will do if they place entirely based on differential score is that they will end up with the winners being people who got really easy matches early and were able to score 20-0s. And then in that case, like Josh Roberts here with 2 20-0s and a 19-1 is just going to smash the rest of the competition. Like, you might as well not even show up at that point. If he just got 2 baby seals in round 1 and 2 and 20-0'd them. A 20-0 is very difficult to score in Warhammer 40,000. You really basically have to get a good matchup, and your opponent has to make like a really, really stupid mistake. And that should not. I don't think that should be worth significantly more than a game that was close between two players that were playing sort of a contentious game. I guess it's sort of conceptual how much you feel that the 5-point differential should determine like whether or not you're allowed to win. Essentially, it does make it so that it smooths over some of the variance of the game. There are a lot of games that are even in this current format are decided on tactical draws, for example, where if you are in parity with your opponent and you and your opponent are scoring very similar amounts, having a good turn of tacticals where you're able to roll 9 points or 10 points right off the bat, whereas your opponent's not able to do that. Challenger cards smooth that over a little bit, but it still can mean you win by 1 or 2 VP. Obviously, in this differential scoring system, that means the game is a draw, but it means that it's more difficult to get concise final placements. However, it doesn't mean that you get super screwed out of a relatively solid placement, even if you do go down by just 1 or 2 victory points. So there's a really interesting sort of conceptual question about using these in singles formats, because they are designed largely for team play. But at the very least, I think it's definitely worth a consideration about the effect that it's having on the chapter-approved format in specific, because we get results like these where this major has 5 X-0-1 players at the end, which is fucking insane. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. That's kind of the heart of the issue, in my opinion. Is there a solution for it? I don't think that there's an easy one besides potentially for singles events, relaxing the draw criteria for differential scoring, and saying that maybe it's only 2 or 3 points to get an 11-1 rather than a full 6. I don't know, but I also want to talk about the lists that went X and XO and 1, because we didn't talk about that in otherwise. Hate using the system in singles. All it does is reward someone for getting weak opponents. Yeah, that's why the events that use it as the placement metric, that use differential scoring as the number 1 metric, I don't think are doing it. I don't think are doing it very well. I think getting a 20-0 is like whatever, right? As long as you get the win, that in terms of like placement, right? You can use it as a tiebreaker. I don't really care about tiebreakers. I think there's a lot of ink wasted about exactly what the tiebreaker criteria should be and what's the fairest way to do that. There is a system that I like that uses like a weighted differential, essentially, that's like based on your opponent's skill level, but it ends up just being like a variety of sort of path to victory or strength of schedule. And I honestly, I don't think it really matters. Like, I think if you're 5-0, then you should be at the top of the game, right? I think that wins should be valuable of everything. The events that use this differential scoring system as the number one placement metric, where even if you go, 5-0, somebody could beat you going 4-1 as long as they had 20s on the record. I don't think that is a good way to do placements. Beyond that, the only issue that I really have with it is this propensity to draw. Now, in a team format, the draw is valuable, and I think that that's really cool and interesting. And I understand that a lot of people want to use it in singles events in order to prepare for team formats, but I do think that it kind of like muddies the water here with these results. And that's why I think I would love to see a relaxed criterion for draws in the future. Maybe the differential should be 3, make it out of 30 instead of 20. That'd be interesting. That means a challenger card is very easily one differential point. Could be kind of funny. Just get rid of the draw range. Only way to draw is true tie and VP. When player's ahead by point, it's an 11. It's an 11-9. Yeah, I think that's probably okay. I wonder if like it is worth sort of wasting breath talking about this in terms of singles in particular, because it's like not a singles designed format, and if players want to get used to it, maybe it's worth the effort, like sort of discussing or playing with it in a singles event with using the rules that you would use for a team event, so that you can prepare yourself for the differential sort of arithmetic. I don't think it would change that much, though, to be fair, and I don't think it would be unreasonable to use a system like that. So I don't know. 40k Elo. So I personally don't like Elo. I've talked about this in the past, but I don't think for a while. And there's been a lot of discussion about Elo in Warhammer 40,000. Elo, I think. I mean, there's a lot of games that use Elo. A lot of them are digital. And I think a big thing about digital games that we don't really conceptualize for 40k is that in an online game that uses an elo or a ranking system, like a decaying ranking system, if you don't want your game to be ranked, you can just make another account, right? And one in which you don't care about elo. And because 40k is an in-person game, you can't necessarily do that unless, like, I guess, like, you could make multiple BCP accounts maybe that don't use your real name. But I think that gets, like, conceptually weird. Maybe there might be a bit of a cultural, like, stigma against that, because a lot of people are used to using their real names. So if you were to make up a bunch of, like, random names, I think someone would side-eye that. Maybe that's a problem, but part of the thing that I think is cool in Warhammer or in tabletop games is your capacity to go out on a weekend and, like, fuck around and not necessarily take a competitive event particularly seriously. Now, if you're playing on a solo queue or whatever, and you swap to your burner account, and all you do, and you just play, like, off the wall compositions, and you try to, like, meme people into oblivion, that's fine, right? Because you're on a burner account, who cares? If you do that in person, so I rock up to an event, I'm playing 120 Corn Berserkers, and I get stomped because I'm playing an objectively trash list. Then suddenly my elo tanks, right? If I have a good elo at that point, now people I get no incentive to do that, and people get huge bonuses against me. The other thing too is that, like, if I'm already a high elo ranking and I care about preserving my elo, I'm actively incentivized not to play in events. Like, if there's an RTT in my local area that I want to go to, but it is submitting to a system using elo ranking, or it's going to be elo ranked, I'm incentivized not to go, because if I drop a game, especially against someone who isn't high elo ranked, I'm fucked, right? I'm super duper tanked, and I don't think that marries well with the spirit of the game. That's my opinion. I think it's an interesting question. It's an interesting talking point, but I don't think that, like Warhammer's a game with a lot of variance and high iteration time, and I don't think that people should be punished for not necessarily like trying every single game to win as hard as possible in order to preserve an elo ranking. And that's just how I feel about it. When I was playing Warhammer very competitively for a while, I kept track of all of my statistics, and I did it for a full, I think, 18 months. And I found that it ruined the game. I actively began to dislike the game because of how closely I was paying attention to my statistics, and that taught me a lot about myself, to be honest. And I realized, I was like, man, I'm taking every game super duper personally, and I'm going out of my way. Like I'm basically becoming like that guy, right? Where if I show, and I was only, in fairness, only keeping track of competitive events, so I wasn't like doing this in practice games or whatever. But I would show up and like I would play against someone new, and I would go out of my way to crush them as hard as I could, because if I, gave them a foot and ended up losing the game or even dropping my score in the metrics that I was keeping track of, that would reduce my win rate or my average, my average differentials. Keeping track of like victory point scores at that point, I think, or something. And it sucked. I fucking hated it. I had to approach every game like it was the finals of a GT, and I think it actively ruins the experience of the game, and I don't want that for the larger community. I don't think that would be fun or interesting. And if you introduce a system by which everyone's games are being monitored in that way, I think it will start to bring out the worst in the community, and I think it will make competitive 40k super unfun to interact with. But that's just based on my personal experience. Other people might have different opinions. That's purely opinion based. I do appreciate ranking systems, and I really like ranking systems. I think something like the ITC, where you take top X events and then that's your ranking. I think that's more interesting than a system where it compares individual players against each other, which I think has the opportunity to become very toxic. That's like really off base though. That was a good question. Justin sent me like on a little bit of a tangent. That was a tactical tangent. That's a really good tactical tangent right there. Yeah. So for the folks who are wondering what ELO is, ELO is a system by which players are weighted on their win rate. It's a guy's name. It's a dude named ELO. Something ELO came up with it. I think people think it's an acronym a lot of times. It's a proper noun. I don't know the specifics, and I think that it change. It varies from format to format and from game to game. But generally speaking, essentially what it is it compares two players. It tries to assess two players' comparative skill level, and then it awards a skill point bonus essentially to those players based on the difference between them. So, for example, if I'm brand new and I've never shown up to an RTT before or a GT before, and I rock up in round one and I play against someone who is really good, in the ELO ranking system, and they crush me, I will lose points for losing a game, but I will not lose that many points because the difference between our rankings is so high. If I were to beat someone who is significantly higher ranked than me, then I would get a ton of points and they would lose a ton of points. However, if you are playing players of a pair, like with a skill parity, then you will the points change between the two based on a single event, a single game result will not be huge because the difference between your two scores is not enormous. So essentially, it disincentivizes you, and this is part of my issue with it. It disincentivizes you from taking events that are smaller or less, like prestigious. It disincentivizes you from taking them less seriously, because if you are ELO ranked and you show up at your local 25-player GT and you play something silly and someone in round one beats you who is playing a serious list, even if that person's ELO is very low, they tank your score, right? So if you care about elo and you show up and you aren't on your A game every single time and you play against someone who's like doing whatever, then they like it crushes you. You know what I mean? And so if that's important to you, then every single game you're going to play like it's super impactful, especially if your opponent is new, which is like the most toxic behavior possible. You're gonna show up and like give no quarter. There's no chance I can lose this game. If you've never played a game before, I have to crush you into the fucking dirt, because otherwise my score is tanked and I get kicked off my competitive team or whatever. So like that's the danger, I think, and I don't know if it's compatible with 40k's like ethos as like a community system. Oh man. um mm-mm-mm. And fifth used to crush each other with no mercy for the love of the game, not elo. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The proper elo would match with people around your elo rating. So that like only works to a certain extent, right? Because Warhammer 40k events are not enormous. So let's say you show up to like a random GT. How many people around? And if you're like John Lennon, right? And you do the John Lennon thing where you show up to a random GT with Stormlance. No, I'm not gonna say John Lennon's gonna drop a game to like somebody who's never played before, but there are probably not that many people at like a random 25 man that are around that same elo rating, right? Like 440,000 has the huge, an enormous distribution of player enfranchisement, and so there's like a limited pool of people who you actually play against, which means that you would essentially create like two separate like game like systems where it's only the people who play against each other all the time if their elo rankings are similar, and then it's only the people who are like and then it's like everyone else, right? And I think that you'd only end up like that only really works like in 1 or 2 rounds out of an event, which you would end up getting in the early rounds rather than the later rounds. So your hardest rounds are the first ones rather than the later ones when you get to the finals, which I think is like equally weird. It sounds like the most lore accurate system of play. A Space Marine would never be seen losing to a lowly guardsman. We must crush them beneath our heel. Oh man, did not mean to completely derail the stream. That's totally fine. I think it's an interesting discussion. I haven't talked about that in a really long time, but that's I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. Anyway, chat, I want to talk about the lists. So here are the results from this event that had 1 million draws in it. I didn't talk about these lists. I actually, between this and the Tularis GT, there were a couple other events that had draws in the finals. I was like, usually the best armies of 40k was pretty long this week because there was a lot of factions doing well. We even had a draw in the finals of a GT at the auspicious events, which was really fun. And usually I will talk about XO and ones. I think that my policy now, and I'll probably put this in my little policy document, is that I will probably cut out XO ones using differential scoring, especially because it seems like they may be more likely in this format. And unfortunately, my original recording for the video this week was 90 minutes. And so I think that I if I were to add another 4 or 5 lists in here for this situation, that would be silly. So that's probably what I'm going to do in the future. But what it does do is give us content to talk about on this show. So that is what we're going to be doing today, and that's what's up. Speaking of this, we facing the rank 4 UK player the other day who's an amazing opponent, helping with rolls and positioning messed up since you're decently new to the FLGS. Lovely game, though. Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean. That is such a good example of, I think, the power of Warhammer 40,000 as a social game. One thing I used to talk about a lot, which is I think really cool, is because Warhammer is as like a sport it's not very like, sportified. The community is very small. You can just rock up to a GT and play like the #1 player in the world. Right? You're like, oh shit, I rolled up into an RTT and like Folger Pile's current world champions there, and like I could just get paired with him and then we play. That's not something you can do in like a big sport, but because this is a hobby that can just like randomly happen. And if you don't put a lot of emphasis on that particular game, it's a huge opportunity for people to like help each other out, right? So you can take the game very casually and you can give advice to people. You'll probably still win, but like maybe you can keep the game closer by helping them grow as a player rather than crushing them into the dirt. Whereas if you give them, if you incentivize people, and this is also something that happens with like differential scoring, for example, whereas if this number is really important, I'm actively disincentivized from giving you any assistance at all. This system is designed so that I'm meant to scumbag you into wins, right? I'm supposed to take points away from you. So if you make mistakes, I'm supposed to punish them. If we're playing at the WTC, that's totally valid. If we're playing at like Baby's First RTT, very toxic. So I don't know, like for a major level event, obviously, like it's a very different story than if we're playing, just like randomly at an LGS. But if my final placement depends very, very heavily on my differential, and I'm giving you like pointers to score more points, I'm like actively hurting myself, and so I'm incentivized to be as big of a dickhead as I can. But if that's not the case, then I think people, if all I have to do is beat you by 1 victory point and the results of the game doesn't matter that much, then I'm gonna like do my best to make sure that we get as close as possible to that 1 victory point and that you learn as much as possible, because that actively helps the game. It helps everyone's like perception of you as a player. You become like a better ambassador for, a potential team or whatever down the road. And so there's only incentive to play in a more egalitarian way. Whereas if you put upon a bunch of emphasis on the score or the final results of the game, that it all goes away. And I think that that's a really good sort of a call out that I think is a really beautiful thing about the Warhammer 40k community that I don't want everyone to see sort of jeopardized at all. All right. Gary P was there, got 4 wins and a loss, counted as 3 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. A little annoying, but that's the breaks. Yeah, that's the feels bads is when you win by like 4, and then your opponent's like, no, it's a 10-10. You're like, okay, man, whatever. But I don't know. I always, because my play style is extremely, extremely defensive, and I always try to play for a close win rather than going all out to try to 20-0 people, because I don't know. I feel like I'm just gonna lose if I do that. Then as long as I beat you by a victory point, I consider it a win. Conceptually, even if the tiebreakers don't think about that way. If I beat you by 1 point, that's fine. To the chagrin of my 8-player team, where they're like, Trevi, stop getting 10-10s. We need you to get 20-0 so you can win. And I'm like, no, I'll leave my opponent by 2 victory points every time. All right, let's talk about these lists. We've bloviated for long enough, chats. I want to talk about some Warhamster 40,000 lists. Josh Roberts, the great man himself. Someone who I hope is not responsible for the current night infestation that we are inundated by, went X0-1, which I chuckled at a little bit. He was playing Space Marines, I think Classic Space Marines. It is Ultramarines in a Stormlance Task Force. Oh, we're running sort of a John Lennon sort of deal. That's cool. Shout out to all the Ultramarine players in the comment section of my Monday video. Ooh, y'all were sad that we didn't see any 5-0s from Ultramarines this week, even though we saw Salamanders 5-0 last week, and there were 5 undefeated Space Marine lists in the top rankings this week. It's not good enough. You have to win with Roboute Gilliman. If you don't win with Roboute Gilliman, it doesn't count. That's what I've learned from reading the YouTube comment section. Only Gilliman counts as a Space Marine. Literally no other model does. So that's how it goes. Gary P 1x4. Yeah, exactly. You know what's up. Yeah, for sure. Nothing is worse than helping someone new and they roll like dog shit. That's true. The worst part too is when you're trying to help someone new and then, or I guess it's not worse. It's just very funny. Is when you're trying to help someone and you're like, hey, here's how you should approach this combat or whatever. And then you roll bad and they like roll over you and you just beat yourself. That always gives me a little chuckle. So we've got a combi weapon lieutenant, Marnie Iskalgar, Robo Booty Gilliman, and Uriel Ventress is back. in a big way. I'm so interested in Uriel Ventures. So here's the funny thing that happens, and I was actually considering this. I was list building to fight knights. There was a weird Ultramarine Firestorm Assault Force that I was actually considering playing, because I was trying to push like Bolter and Scepters through, like, to the point where they could kill big knights, and if you combo them together, they might be able to do it. But it ended up being, I think, too inefficient. But that was the one thing I was considering, because you can really easily get them into the 12 inches for +1 strength. You get them to strength 6, they wound knights on 4s or 5s. You so they wound them on 4s, and then you incursor, so they hit on 2s, and you can fish for sustain 2 on the bolter shots. That was with full rerolls. So sustain 2 or AP 1, you're probably getting around cover. And I was like, that's kind of fun, but I didn't end up playing it. But the thing I realized was that because Marneus Calgar no longer generates UCP for being on the battlefield, if you take him with Guilliman, now you can reserve him and you don't lose anything. Previously, he would not generate his command points at the start of in the command phase with if he was in reserve. And so sometimes you would like reserve him and then rapid ingress, and then the rapid ingress was like kind of free because then he would generate his CP the next command phase. But now you don't even care at all. So you can play Ventress and point Ventress at Calgar, and then you get a deep striking Calgar. So I was like, that's something. There's something there, which is, I think, pretty cool. So that's like an interesting knock-on effect of that whole sort of interaction. But Calgar with Guilliman still definitely worth playing, because Calgar himself, if you consider basically almost any of the other sort of like melee character packages, Calgar's so efficient for the amount of damage and the utility that he offers you. Because we're playing, I guess in Stormlance Task Force, he's a little bit less unique, but the ability to advance, shoot, and charge all the time, forever is like huge for him, because you don't like, there's no additional resource and cost for that. We're rocking double Ballistas Dreadnought, Company Hero Squad, Eradicator Squad, 1 Scout Squad, Stern Guard Veterans, triple Storm Speeder Hamburglar Strike plus a Storm Raven Gunship. Stern Guard Veterans Squad. Are we? I guess Ventress attaches to the Stern Guard Squad potentially, and then we can deep strike Calgar. Or the Eradicators, I guess, is actually another really good option for that, right? And then just deliver those guys with the Stern Guard Veterans. I guess you could also put Calgar in the Storm Raven Gunship. That also works too. And Ventress could just deep strike himself, I guess. But the Stern Guard Veteran Squad actually deep striking is kind of spooky, because the awkward part for them is that they want to get rapid fire so bad to turn on their devastating guns. But they often have trouble doing that. Plus, you can get him up into a position where he can use his CP tax aura, his command point tax aura on things, which is actually kind of cool as well. So either one of those coming out, one of them coming out of the Storm Raven, the other one rapid ingressing out of Deep Strike, is actually kind of cool. So I like to see that. Plus, Storm Speeder Hamburger Strikes are really good in this detachment, because we can -1 to hit and wound them, so they actually become legitimately hard to kill. Plus, the Storm Raven Gunship's a big piece of crap to kill too. This is just wild. And then we basically have like some utility, right? The Scout Squad, Eradicator is just like hopping around. And then the Combi Weapon Lieutenant and Guilliman can sort of like staple together, and then Guilliman's got the permanent load op as long as he's standing next to the Combi Weapon Lieutenant. So he doesn't need any help, even if the rest of your list is just like flying vehicles that otherwise wouldn't really benefit him. So that's cool. That's a neat list right there, chat. I love it. Would I say that Summer Slaughter in New Jersey is a good for beginners to go to and learn more? No, yeah. So the differential points event scoring is very rare in the U.S. If you play in the U.S., it is unlikely you will run into this. It's not that it doesn't get played, but it does not get played very often. It's largely saved for team events in US play, whereas you see it more often in singles in the UK and Europe. Summer Slaughter is not using it, to my knowledge, and I would strongly recommend that you go. Plus, I'll be there, so you get to see me, which will be cool. So yeah, go get your ticket. Go buy it. Personal favorite at tournaments: tell your opponent about shadows, and we both prepare for it. And it's just nothing. I had a really bad shadows earlier last week, actually. which it was fun. It's fun for that ability to occasionally do nothing, because so often it hits literally every model on the battlefield and it absolutely destroys your opponent, and then everyone feels bad. The biggest feel bads of ever. Should we move on to talk about some Thousand Suns chats? There is actually another Marines. I think we'll talk about the other Marines real quick. Enrique Aguirre, a little R roll in there. Ranking Gladius Task Force. I think this is sort of the standard build. It's Artificer Armor, Gravis Captain, Combi Up Lieutenant. Ooh, Honor Vehement. What? We played Honor Vehement on the Combi Lieutenant? Isn't that enhancement like 25 points? It's like really expensive for some reason. I understand why, because they want to like sort of fade the hero hammer that we had last edition, where you would build like a bunch of characters to stab people. But the amount that they charge for offensive enhancements it's only 15 now. Oh, okay, well that's probably okay. That's probably a nice little point filler then. But the amount that they charge for some offensive enhancements is like absolutely criminal. What the one was that always gets me is like Blade of Endless Bloodshed, I think, is like 35 points. Is that right? Did I have that right? Yeah, it's 30. Fucking 30 points, Chad. I understand it's a good enhancement, but some people get Admona Mortis for 10. And then World Eaters have to pay a 20-point tax on their enhanced weapon, on their big cool sword. Honor Vehement for 15 is okay, I guess. But I say that as a proponent of Hero Hammer. Give me more cool offensive enhancements that do interesting, and I would appreciate it. I think we should go back to having like a standard enhancement block like we did in 9th edition, where you could always take like the trash ass Inspiring Leadership on your warlords, and we should just have like a +1 attack or like a +1 strength and AP enhancement for available for any character, and then you can always just put them on them. Any non-monster vehicle character, or maybe they're more expensive on monster vehicle characters. I don't know, but I want more cool characters that are good at fighting. I like it when characters punch people and then they die. So excited for post Night Bend, so you can play 3x Brood, 3x Hyper Raveners. Oh, Broodlord in Vanguard Onslaught? Yeah. Unironically, Hyper Adaptive Raveners are like a godsend for that detachment. It just sucks that Tyranids got the most transformative detachment of the entire edition right at a time where the meta became instantly like acidified to them, where they're just gonna immediately die if they hit any of the really good things. Oh boy, poor Tyranids. They can't catch a break, man. The one time where they were fun to play, and now they just vaporized to Knights. What a time to be alive. We've got an Intercessor squad in here, triple Ballistus Dreadnought, 1 Company Heroes, 1 Gladiator Reaper, Infiltrator squad, Scout squad, double Vindicator. Yeah, this is like normal stuff. I think that we shifted a couple things around. Like there usually was like an Invader ATV in this build. And it looks like we cut that and we upgraded a Scout to an Intercessor maybe, and then ended up taking the Honor Vehement, I think, to fill out the points. But I think that's all that happened there. So just some real small side grades. I love the idea of this enhancement on this guy though, because he goes to like is he 6 attacks with sustained hits? Is that right? And then I think he's like AP1 because of the Combat Blade upgrade. He is... Oh, he's only 5 attacks, sustained 1. Oh, he's anti-infantry 4. So he could go to 7 attacks, sustained hits 1, AP1. That's not good. It's actually kind of embarrassing in Assault Doctrine only. But it's cool. I don't know. Well, is there anything... There's no other enhancements that you would rather give that guy, right? And we're at 2,000, yeah. So the other thing you could do is like give him the permanent tactical doctrine, so he can always fall back and shoot. But then who cares about that? Nobody gives a shit. He's gonna die if he's in melee anyway. What a time to be alive! Oh man, need Imperial Fists. Even Anvil Siege Force needs to be reworked. I think that in the current, you could play Imperial Fist without Anvil Siege Force. I personally, I don't like the fixation that some people have on individual chapters being tied to individual detachments. I understand that the detachments were reworked from their old subfaction abilities, but it is totally legal to play Tor Garradon in Gladius Task Force. Don't feel bad about doing that. And I unironically think that he might actually be kind of good right now. I mean, turns out a dude with like huge hyper bonuses against vehicles probably good in a metagame where all you have to do is fight knights all the time. So, you know, plus Lysander is actually like kind of goated too. I don't know. I think that these guys like could potentially be okay. You get ignore cover on your unit, and he gets +2 strength, AP, and damage into vehicles and monsters, and fortifications, but nobody gives a shit. So he's anti-vehicle 2+. He's 2 shots, anti-vehicle 2+, AP 1, ignore cover 4 damage. It's only 2 shots though. But if you like, does he go to Eradicators? He fucking does. Is that good? Can you dual attach him? You can, right? Because he's captain. You can dual attach him with a like a apothecary biologus. That's something, right? We're playing with fire. Then you could do 5 up lethal sustain with in Gladius Task Force, and you could get lethal sustain on his 4 damage anti-vehicle gun. Be kind of cool, right? I don't know. There's something there. Is it good? Yeah, it's. I think it is. It is good. He's probably just good, but is he good enough? As good as other Space Marine chapters, I guess is the question. All right. Let's talk about Thousand Suns. So we had 2,000 Sunless at XO1. This list is 20 Rubric Marines, which is kind of sweet. Triple Zangor Shaman. So Brian Sipe over here, man after my own fucking heart. Triple Zangor Shamans. He sees it. He sees the Matrix. I've been saying it since this codex came out. The Zangor Shaman is the most goated data sheet in this codex. It's like not even close. This guy's 55 points. He has Kabbalistic Rituals. He has a Psychic Weapon, so he benefits from all your Grand Coven and synergies. And he's move 10 infantry. The one downside is he gives up Assassination. I understand. He gives up Assassination, but you could Destined by Fate him. So if they just go like, blam, here's 2 shots from a gun, you fail the first one and eat the 3 damage, and then you just Destined the second one, and they're like, dang it, I didn't kill him, and then he holds an objective or whatever. I actually love these little guys. I think they're so good. 3 is a lot. I like 2, but 3 is probably fine as well. We're running an Exalted Disc Sorcerer with Incandium, so we can duplicate our Doombolt. We have an Eldritch Vortex Infernal Master, another second regular Infernal Master, Magnus the Red Sorcerer with Unbelievable Crystal, so we can teleport that little bad Mamma Jamma around. We saw the most insane play of that at ACO. Malachi Fowler dropped 10 Rubric Brains in his opponent's deployment zone. I should make a short about this game, actually, because it was the most insane game I've ever experienced. He dropped 10 Rubric Brains in his opponent's deployment zone with the Unbelievable Crystal top of turn 1. They killed like a Bloatrone, I think, and his opponent was like, I guess I will kill them for free.
Ryan G donated $5 through Super Chat. Bad Trevi. You are not allowed to have fun with Tyranids. Back to 30 Steelers. No fun new models / data sheets for you. There is no other way.
I've played like 2 games with 30 Gene Steelers in 10th edition, and I did not like them. I don't know, chat. I don't think we can all duplicate the game that we watched from ACO, where a Gene Stealer unit basically killed Canis Rex, was charged by Canis Rex, and then killed him. I don't think we can all duplicate the absolute aura of that player, whose name I forget, which I feel bad about, but that was some ridiculous game. Like T4, I don't know. I don't understand. And then outside of Vanguard Invasion, they don't advance in charge, and they're really hard to maneuver. And even inside Vanguard Onslaught, if you don't go first, they don't have threat range. Like, move 8, advance in charge? Okay, cool. Liberator Assault Group called, and it would like to show you it's like threat range that's twice as long out of a deep striking unit that can come out of Ingress. Like, I don't know. I'm not Broodlord build, chat. I'm not Broodlord build, but maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm bad and stupid and bad at 40k. Maybe that's what's up. I have no idea. Every time I dunk on G-Stealers, they win a GT. I'm just here to pad their numbers, dude. That's what I'm. That's all I'm here for. I'm such a Tyranid fanboy that all I want to do is talk crap about Tyranids so people don't tech for them and then they win GTs. I'm playing the long game. But realistically, if I was actually Tyranid fanboy, I'd talk about how bad they were all the time so they would get buffed. Just saying. Which, I don't know. Maybe they need. Maybe I think that Tyranids, they should swap the. Here's what I think. All right, real talk. They should swap the +1 strength for being in Synapse for Twin Linked. Every weapon should get Twin Linked. And then I think maybe Tyranids are okay. Although, yeah, that's what I think. We should have Twin Linked Horror Spexes and Norn Assimilators stuff. Then Tyranids would be okay as a faction. Interesting Chaos Knight factoid at Nottingham. There were 5 Chaos Knights in the top 20, but none in the top 10. Gatekeep much? Yeah. I didn't have time for it this week because I didn't. I only finished my Best Armies video like a handful of hours before I went live, so I did not have time to do stats. But what I'm gonna do tonight or tomorrow morning for Tactical Tuesday, I saw some questions about this earlier in the chat, is go through in individual game results and tabulate stuff that was doing well into the Chaos and Imperial Knight skew lists. So. That'll be an interesting discussion to have tomorrow, but that's for tomorrow's show is when we're going to be doing that. I imagine that this is probably something associated with it, maybe. So there's 1 Rhino in this list. There's also a unit of 10 Zangors for utility. 9 Zangor Enlightened. So we have a 6-man for the Exalted Disc Sorcerer. I see some people running triple of these. Triple feels like a lot. I think you get diminishing returns off of the Zangor Enlightened units. They are individually very good, but if they're not shooting at the target of your reroll ritual, they actually kind of fall down pretty hard because they only hit on 4s. So I don't know if I love like the lists that put like 500 points into Fate Caster Greatbow of Zangor Enlightened units, but maybe I'm silly. We could put a Zangor Shaman in one of them to give them +1 to hit though, which is kind of neat. Although I don't know if necessarily you want to do that because you want to use the small ones as utility, so you want to keep them super cheap. And then we have 2 Mutalith Vortex Beasts. What a beast, chat. What's interesting in this is that we actually have more Rubric Marines than we have Sorcerers to attach to them. So we are running basic Rubric Marines with no friends. So I imagine that we get the Eldritch Vortex in a squad. Oh, the 2 Infernal Masters might just like hang out inside the Rhino, actually. They can't firing deck out of it right now, which is a little bit funny because they lost its firing deck. I have a sneaking suspicion it lost its firing deck because of Infernal Masters, but I don't know that for sure. And then, or we could take 1 Infernal Master and then like a utility unit, right? Where you just put 5 Rubric Marines into the transport. So if your opponent, you don't have to then commit the 200 point like super Doom squad out of the Rhino in order to contest an objective. You can just do it with 5 and they can disembark, move, double move, shoot you, like shoot a 5-man unit and clear it and take an objective away. And that's probably fine. I think that's like a perfectly fine use of a 5-man rubric, but then you still have the Infernal Master inside the Rhino to absolutely dump or something if you need to later. An Infernal Master coming out of reserve is actually kind of nice right now, too, because you can set up like weird overwatches with it. And the best thing that we got in this new codex is that we don't need these casters to be on the battlefield to generate Cabal points anymore because of how Kabbalistic rituals work now. So you are incentivized to actually play these guys in reserve and play them in transports, which means that they're very much more flexible than we've ever seen Thousand Suns be before, which is neat. WTC house ruled that Thousand Suns Rhinos get firing deck too. What the fuck? They just gave it to them? That's not right. What? They just gave it them. They just stacked the ability onto the datasheet. It literally doesn't have it though. What? There's like a funny should it have firing deck? Maybe. Every other Rhino has firing deck, but also like basically every other Rhino up until the World Eaters release had self-repair, and this Rhino doesn't have self-repair. Should we give it self-repair too, chat? Oh, it's clearly a mistake that it didn't get self-repair. It's like so funny to me when people assign when that is very realistic of a conscious decision by the designers, right? Rhinos with a bunch of buffs, putting 2 Infernal Masters at the top and shooting 4d6 flamer shots at people, fading the hazardous checks on the Infernal Masters themselves, blah blah blah. There absolutely could have been a piece of playtester feedback that said, hey, with the new rules, and now that these guys don't have to be on the battlefield to generate Cabal points, we feel that this is too strong. Okay, that's easy. Take firing deck off of the Thousand Suns version of the Rhino. It's very, very reasonable that is a conscious decision from the games designers, but immediately like, oh no, we can't assign any any agency to the games designers at all. It must have been a mistake, so we're just gonna add it back on. Whatever, dude. Oh man, that's super funny. Same house rule that says, oh, the GW is confirmed the 1 in 12 trick works. So here's your 12 document saying it doesn't. Yeah, no comment. Doesn't sense aren't good enough. Needs buffs. It's for sure. Well, I mean, more power to him if he's using the event rules, but that's a weird rule to have. I'm gonna level with you, chats. That doesn't feel like a 8-bound can go in the Rhino, even though it says exalted 8-bound can't or whatever the thing was, or exalted 8-bound can go in a Rhino, but 8-bound can't or whatever. Like a clear typo. That feels certainly like it could have been intentional. I just wish that they would come out with that stuff earlier. It's like it is kind of obnoxious because like, if they released a Thousand Suns FAQ, is there a Thousand Suns FAQ actually an FAQ document? If there's an FAQ document for Thousand Suns and it doesn't include a Rhino firing deck, then I actually embarrassed that I don't know this. There's a fucking Codex FAQ. There is a legitimate Codex FAQ with typo fixing that doesn't have firing deck on it. Why are we adding firing deck to them? They would have changed it in this thing where they changed all of their typos. I'm losing my mind. All right, whatever. Whatever, chat. It doesn't matter. Let's talk about a different list with a cool demon prince in it. How's that? Oh, man. Wild. Anyway, folks, let's talk about this other list. This one is another Grand Coven. The excellent callback of a list name. Wow, that's OG. That's some OG like Robot Chicken energy right there. I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it back. We have the Eldritch Vortex Winged Demon Prince in this one, which is a combo that I absolutely love. So you get the +1 strength and damage on the 9-shot sustain gun, which turns it into literally a heavy bolter with sustain D3 when you come out of reserve. So we've talked about this one in the past. Sometimes we see it play in lieu of Magnus the Red. This one is choosing to play it in addition to Magnus the Red, which interestingly gives you 2 outlets for the full reroll stratagem. So you can drop this guy in, give him the huge amount of sustain, close deep strike him, and then full reroll him, and he vaporizes one thing when he hops in. Which, first of all, is really cool. So your opponent has to think about a close deep strike the entire time, and at any point he could just come in and kill whatever he's touching. Even if you don't full reroll him, he's gonna kill like 5 idiots just fine, and he'll like clear your home objective. So that's always spooky. But then you also have Magnus the Red to act as your outlet for your Kabbalistic rituals, because he can cast 2 at +1. So this little dude is actually kind of sweet. The other thing, too, is that the Eldritch Vortex affects all of your psychic weapons, which also makes him better in melee. So it puts him up to strength 9, 4 damage in melee. he's obviously not the most insane thing in the world, but it actually puts him to a position where he can start to kill bigger things, especially because his psychic weapons will get whatever your psychic bonus of your psychic bonus du jour is, if you will. So you could flip him into +1 to wound, for example. He shoots his 9 shots with +1 to wound and +1 strength and damage. Then he comes in and he's like wounding vehicles on 4s or maybe 3s in some cases for 4 damage a pop in melee. And he actually starts to get to the point where he can start to kill people, which is something where normally the Siege Demon Princes kind of fall flat on. But I think this guy is really cool. He's like a little baby Magnus. Magnus is like, don't talk to me or my son ever again. And he's like, Magnus is like blowing up a big tank. And then the Eldritch Vortex Demon Prince is like, I killed 5 scouts. Daddy, am I doing well? And he's like, good job, buddy. You're really trying. I'm so proud of you. We also then have an Exalted Disc Sorcerer with Incandium. So same thing that we talked about in the last game. 1 Sorcerer with Umberlific Crystal, double additional Sorcerers. These guys have basically, and I think it's because of Rhinos. Yeah, because we have double Rhino in this list. I think if you are running them in Rhinos, they've kind of eclipsed the Infernal Masters in a big way just because of their attack volume. The downside is that Sorcerers are only Ballistic Skill 3. So if you don't have the +1 to hit from the Rhino, they actually get really inconsistent because they don't have unless you're shooting at the target of your reroll, Kabbalistic Ritual, which is questionable, I guess. They're like wildly inconsistent, right? Their 6s are huge, but they miss a bunch of times anyway. So it's like a crapshoot whether or not they do anything. But once you benefit from the +1 to hit and they're just throwing a bunch of dice at you, it actually feels pretty good. If you're just standing them on the battlefield, like the Umberlific Crystal on the Sorcerer is pretty nice because he has a relatively long range by himself, so he can hop around into weird angles and get shots on things that you wouldn't normally expect. Otherwise, just on the table, I think that the Infernal Master, I don't have any numbers to showcase for this, but it feels to me like the Infernal Master auto hitting is a little bit more consistent than the Sorcerer, just being like kind of a funny little guy. But I guess on his go turn, he should theoretically average as many hits as he attacks. So he averages 9 shots at 1 damage on his go turn, whereas an Infernal Master consistently gets 7, but has to hazardous check for it. So it's like 6 and 1 half dozen the other, I guess. The Infernal Master can do so more consistently over the course of the game, whereas the Sorcerer has a higher spike of damage potentially. But as soon as you start to throw rerolls in there, the Sorcerer probably, I think, wins out. Once he's in the Rhino, I think it definitely sounds like he wins out. We've also then got double Zangor Shamans again. Score some frickin' points with those little bad Mamma Jammas. We're running 25 Rubric Marines, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 25 Rubric Marines. Hot diggity damn. Double Chaos Rhino to carry them around. 1 Mutalith Vortex Beast. So we've cut a Vortex Beast in a Zangor unit. So we actually have Rubric Marines for the Disc Sorcerer to join. So he can apply his 18-inch Lone Operative bubble to the Rubric unit instead of to the Zangor Enlightened unit. That's an interesting decision, and it looks like we are running Warp Flamers on all of the Rubric Marines. I almost would wonder if you start to play Bolters on those guys, if they are using the 18-inch Lone Op, because that feels like a unit that you want to be holding down your backline, and having longer range weapons on them might be more relevant, but I don't know off the top of my head if that's the case. Interesting, we elected to take Rubric Marines for that guy instead of the Zangor, and then get like another enhancement into the list. But I guess we've just valued the Warp Flamers enough that it's like maybe fine. It definitely lets you play a little bit more aggro with this guy, and he can actually start to use Binding Tendrils, right? Which is cool. He's still Binding Tendrils, right? Yeah. It's funny because since he started getting added to the Zangor Enlightened squads, I almost never saw Binding Tendrils like meaningfully triggered, because he's always sitting in the back and they're just like shooting you from a million miles away, and he shoots like one thing that then it gets killed by all your stuff in your deployment zone with his flamer, whereas the actual bow shots go somewhere else. It's a little bit funny that he's got a relatively close range weapon that also slows you down. It makes it hard for you to like get up to attack him, but if he's shooting you with his gun, you can shoot him back, even though he has his 18-inch Lone Operative thing, which is like a little bit idiosyncratic, I guess, which is funny. if I end up doing another weekly stream, it would be good to talk about how factions could be better balanced mechanically in 11th edition. Certain factions lessing transports, grenades, tank shock. You trying to get me to talk about Tyranids again? I see. What's up, Hippie Hunter? I see through your games. I think it could be interesting. I don't know if it's that interesting of a discussion to like dive into in a long form thing, because I think that we would end up sort of exhausting the potential avenues of discussion. I kind of want to do some more lighthearted stuff where we don't go as hard into like meta things as much. I like the idea that if we save our meta discussions for the beginning of the week when it's still fresh in everybody's mind, and then we can kind of like prepare for the next weekend by talking about community discussion, stuff like that. That's kind of the original idea that I had. Let's move on and talk about some Adeptus Sororitas. So the last undefeated result from Glasshammer had a draw in the in round 2, so not the final round, just round 2. Will Whitaker with Bringers of the Flame, which is wild. It's been so long since we've seen this detachment. I actually played against a horrifying Bringers of the Flame list on stream a couple weeks ago in the Tryhard event, which was really cool. It was I think one Palatine was the only character, and then everything was like combat squattable infantry in transports. It was crazy. It kind of showcased the new Sanctifier unit, and I wonder if they're playing that here. They are. All right, so we get to talk about that. So that unit actually low-key rules, and I think it's flown under the radar. People are going to run into that unit, and they're going to be like, what is this? What am I currently being attacked by? Because this unit is nuts. And we'll get to talk about exactly why that is. So Bringers to the Flame is Firestorm Assault Force, but from Wish, right? You get Assault, and you get +1 Strength when you're within 6 instead of 12, I believe. But turns out when your speed literally like doubles that of most Space Marine units, you do end up getting that ability triggered pretty often. We have a Canoness with the Iron Surplus of St. Estelela, which I don't remember what that does. It's been so long since Bringers of the Flame was ruining the metagame. It gives you a 2+7 and a 5+ Final Pain. So that's just like, she doesn't necessarily always have to use her 2+ invulnerable save immediately after disembarking. She can hold that for a little bit maybe. If you don't have a good AP value innately. But this one does also have Shield of Aversion, which is just Armor of Contempt, but it says Adeptus Sororitas on it. So a base 2+ save on a Canoness who can free strat herself for on Armor of Contempt is basically like a 2+ invulnerable save into a lot of instances, in a lot of situations. We have a Dialogus plus Morvenval, 1 Battle Sister Squad, 1 Immolator. Are there Dominions? There are not. So we are definitely combat squatting the Sisters into the Immolator. It is a Melta unit, so we just have some extra Melta stuff. Also, obviously getting the Meltas to potentially up to strength 10 is a big deal. If they can get close enough, and then also giving them Assault is huge, because then it is possible for them to get close enough. So we can start winding like T9 vehicles on 3s, which is kind of a huge breakpoint. Definitely relevant for armigers nowadays. We have a single regular Rhino plus triple Castigator, double autocannon, 1 battle cannon. We get to talk about the funny Castigator like metagame that we experienced for a really long time when the Adeptus Sororitas Codex came out, where there were literal wars fought. Lives were lost based on everyone's opinion on what the most optimal loadout of Castigator turret weapons was. And whether it was 2 battle cannons, 1 autocannon, or 1 battle cannon, 2 autocannons, because the autocannons are better if you already have ignore cover, but the battle cannon becomes superior if you don't have an ignore cover outlet. So oftentimes what you do is you like set people up with the battle cannon to then shoot them with the autocannons to get the twin linked. That's the twin linked like high, the rapid fire shots off. With the additional bonus AP. So like the battle cannon would set them up, and then the autocannons would knock them down. Was basically how things like ended up working. But exactly what the proportion of that was like very funny, because it changed from list to list, and everyone had a very strong opinion on it. It's been a while since we talked about this detachment. God damn. We have a Repentia squad, so that's probably going in that Rhino. As a little bit of a late gamer. I don't think we have too many good we have. I don't believe that there's like that many synergies with this detachment with them. I think there's in fact none. But they are just full rerolls and they hit pretty hard, so it's nice to have like a late game counterpunch. Paragon Warsuits are in here because Assault makes them super silly. Now that they can advance and shoot their guns, and you could potentially auto-6 their advance, it's very difficult to get out of their threat range, which is something that Paragons oftentimes struggle with if they don't have any super big speed buffs otherwise. Double Sanctifiers, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then the big man himself. Some additional long-range shooting coming from Canis Rex. I talked about it in my video this morning, but I think that Canis Rex immediately put at least this Sisters list into Undefeated, and it immediately put Adeptus Mechanicus into Undefeated. And I almost wonder if it's worth like... So Imperial Agents have this thing where a lot of times you can take them in faction for cheaper than you can take them out of faction. I almost wonder if Canis Rex needs to be the opposite, where if you play him in faction, he needs to be like 450 points, but if you play him out of faction, he actually should become cheaper because you can take him in other factions and he can just shore up their absolute dearth of reliable anti-tank. It feels to me like Adeptus Mechanicus is maybe the biggest recipient. I don't know if necessarily Adeptus Sororitas need a Canis Rex equivalent. He does feel he feels him plus Morven's Paragon unit feels kind of they're like basically the same unit. Like they'll kill one of anything if it's like reasonably close to them, but they don't have like insane threat ranges or anything crazy that they do. And so playing the two together like gives you two units that can kind of operate in that way, but I don't know if it's like necessarily breaking new ground for the faction in the same way that it does for Adeptus Mechanicus, where they just like don't have an equivalent unit in their codex. Like what? A gun that's like high reliability and works independently without having to rely on battle line synergies and also punches good. That's crazy. I've never heard of that. If only the Mechanicum could devise some sort of device that would be as powerful as this big man's big fist. That could be cool. Maybe we could see that faction do better than it normally does. In our game, the Repentia were in the back behind the Battle Sisters for late game punch. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, just like saving them for bottom of round 5, and then like they set up like round 3 or 4 and into a center ruin. Once everything's fighting, right? And your opponent has to be dealing with the Paragons and with the Knight, and then the Repentia just run in, and then late game, just come in, clear light the center objective, and you take it with your Battle Sisters. Makes total sense. Let's take a peek at the Sanctifier datasheet real quick here, chat, because I want to talk about this unit. Do I have it saved? I don't, because I'm a goober. And I'm unprepared. Here they are. So this is the Adepta Sororitas kill team. And it kind of released to a whimper, I think because so many other things were releasing like around the same time as this datasheet. But this datasheet is actually insane. So baseline, 6-inch scout. Okay, we're already off to a good start. I don't know why it's zoomed really funny. Can I like increase this a little bit? Nope, it only increases by 50%. All right. That's better. So it's at a baseline, it's a 6-inch scout unit. So you can kind of use it in place or in conjunction with Dominion squads. So it's another unit that can either scout itself or go into a transport and cause the transport as well to scout. So it's like it has a good place alongside Sororitas Rhinos, for example. It's too big for immolators and it can't combat squad because I think it's like 8 models or 9 models or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 models. So it's a little bit too big for an immolator, and you can't combat squad it because it's not called out in the immolator ability. But you can put them in Rhinos, which is great, and they can use the firing deck and do all the normal Rhino stuff. Your Minister and Priest can attach into them, but you're probably not doing that super often unless you have like enhancements that you want to apply. But the thing the other thing is that their weapon profiles are crazy. So we have a Burning Hands, one set of Burning Hands. We have a missionary with a Ministorum Flamer, and then everyone is equipped with hand flamers, or every one of the standard sanctifiers is equipped with hand flamers. So the Burning Hands is a torrent weapon. So we are excuse me. It's like the Holy Fire, excuse me. The Burning Hands is the melee profile. The Holy Fire is a torrent weapon. We can take another set of Holy Fire if we replace the Meltagun, so 2 Holy Fires. So we would have 2 of this profile. It's basically the Brazier off of a Canoness. So it's a one-shot weapon. But remember, we're in Bringers of the Flame. So as long as we get close to the opponent, we're +1 strength. We also have a 2 CP strat for or I think it's 2 CP. It might be one in this attachment. It is 2 CP. We have a 2 CP strat for devastating wounds potentially on this unit, and they're going to be scouting and potentially disembarking from transport. So they have plus everything gains assault, so they can move very quickly up the battlefield to get all those bonuses. So we get 2d6 2 damage flamer shots, right? We get d6 1 damage flamer shots at strength 5, and then 4d6 1 damage flamer shots at strength 4. So for a pretty reasonable points value, these guys are like 90, I think. Is it? I guess this doesn't have the points value on it like the other ones do. They're 100 points. Excuse me, 100 points. For 100 points, we get 1, 2, 3, 7 d6 flamer shots off of a scouting unit. Which seems good. I don't know. With a 5+ invulnerable save. So it's basically like a big spooky Dominion squad. Instead of having a Dominion squad where you only have 4 flamers and you have a reactive move, this unit's slightly harder to kill. It's a higher model count. It doesn't have the invuln save or the armor save, but it has a 5+ invuln baked in, and it has way more flamers. So it's this like one hit wonder that comes out of scouting, which is pretty sweet. It also has like a non-trivial melee profile. You get this Burning Hands thing off of the caster is kind of cute. This like 3 damage devastating. It's not that great, but it's adorable. You have a Death Cult Assassin in there, so 4 strength 4 AP2 1 damage, and then like just a bunch of like random strength 3s. But it's not great melee, but it's definitely better than like 5 Battle Sisters punching you. So this unit feels really expensive, but the amount of pain that you can inflict on people with just this really fast, like annoying unit that's just dumping flamer shots into you is really cool. And definitely as a 1 or a 2 of in Bringers of the Flame, especially because it has so many synergies with torrent weapons. I think this data sheet's like very, very much slept on. These guys are really sweet. If you use a one-shot weapon on a Rhino, the weapon counts as a weapon of the transport, and you can disembark and use it again? Like a hunter killer missile? Oh, out of a firing deck, yeah. You cannot use it for one-shot off a firing deck. Yeah. That one was FAQ'd because the answer was no one knew. The answer is I think that technically you could like re-embark and continue to use one-shot weapons. But it ended up just being FAQ to say that you couldn't do it at all. But yeah, the Rhino's weapons itself is a whole different story. Turn 1, his foot unit came out, flamed your combi weapon, Lieutenant, doing a massive 0 damage. I mean, that's a little unlikely. It should probably have averaged more damage. With a 5d6 1 damage flavors and 2d6 2 damage AP1 flavors, like I feel like you should get that guy. Like there might also been a Rhino in there too, shooting at him. That is pretty funny. Getting ready for Tacoma Open playing Tyranids, thinking about taking 2 Rupture Cannons and 2 Maleceptors and a Lictor. What are my thoughts about the Rupture Cannons? I haven't been impressed with them personally. I feel like I don't know. I I am nonplussed. I think I played 2 test games with the Rupture Cannon Tyrannifex, and I think in my 2 test games it converted 1 attack into a Rhino, which is definitely not worth 200 points. You know what? It is good though, and it's probably going to see some play. Is the Flamer Tyrannifex, the Acid Spray Tyrannifex in Subterranean Assault? Oh boy! If you're playing a more consistent, like a more sort of like stand up and fight game with like Invasion Fleet, the Rupture Cannons I think are maybe a little bit more consistent because they just have the critical effects baked in. I imagine you're playing Subterranean Assault, but I don't know that. But the Flamer, the Torrent Acid Spray guy in Subterranean Assault is actually kind of goated. Is one thing that he can give him ignore cover, which is a big downside of the Acid Spray profile, and then he can just bounce around and get like 1 millimeter of line of sight onto screening units and just instantly vaporize them. And so you could just use him with a Ravener squad, and they just ferry him around the table, and he kills all your opponent's scouts and things. And then even into heavier stuff, he can wound big tanks on 5s. It's not good, but it's definitely, he's not like not contributing, and he just becomes this big annoying thing to kill. Tyrannifexes are for gamblers. Yeah, for sure. Can you donate? Check out my list. Yeah, $5 super chat, and I'll do a list review. Played with Sanctifiers before. They killed 3 Votan bikes in melee. What? That's insane. Did you have a preacher in there? So I want to move over while we are talking about stuff and talk about the Tolaris Grand Tournament. So this one was in Czechia. It was 71 players, so actually on the large side for GTs. But again, we had the same thing. There was a tie in the semifinals. We would have had 2 undefeateds, but unfortunately, it ended up being a 10-10 draw between 2 players. Adeptus Custodes. 1 priest plus Sanctifiers. Okay, that makes total sense. The priest is a big deal in there, because the attack bonus, and then they also gain sustained hits when they're attached by a priest, right? Is kind of a big deal. Plus the priest is is good at fighting too, so that makes total sense. So Lukas Jedlovec. So I'm going to go with that one. Hopefully that's correct. Running some Adeptus Custodes in Shield Host, Lions of the Emperor. Eat your heart out. We're not playing you today. I don't want to play with you anymore. We are on to Shield Host. That's pretty neat. With Trajan. No Lions, but playing Trajan. So we can't duplicate his once per game, his Moment Shackle. We are just rocking that guy anyway. You love to see it. Ooh, okay. I mean, I guess so. Trajan does go kind of hard in Shield Host if he gets his criticals off with his double attack turn. But obviously, he's like so good in Lions of the Emperor. It's like, it's crazy. Is he worth an extra like 20 or 30 points off of a standard character? I don't know. But it's being able to redo his Moment Shackle so that you can actually use multiple modes of it is really, really super cool. So that's kind of sweet. Plus, when a wound sustained makes them hit weirdly hard. Yeah, especially alongside the Preacher actually attacking really, because the Preacher's got an Eviscerator with Midas Tower, right? So, like, the Preacher themselves benefiting from their own detachment abilities is huge. So Trajan, Valerian, plus Blade Champion. We have double Custodian Guards, no Kyria Draxus. This is wild. Okay. No Kyria Draxus, double Custodian Wardens. So that's likely where the Blade Champion and where Valerian is going. Valerian's good because he compounds the defensive effects that Custodian Wardens have. They can just like sort of absorb melee attacks and then be fine because he gives you Armor of Contempt and melee permanently. Trajan is interesting because he can push, if he's in a Custodian Guard squad, he can kind of go super hard in terms of damage, right? Because he's contributing potentially 10 3-damage melee attacks, or 12. I think he's a base 6, and he doubles his attacks when he Moment Shackles, right? With wound rolls, right, and sustained hits with 6 base melee attacks, and then Moment Shackle, start of the fight phase, can turn it to a 12 melee attacks. Yeah. So you could go 12 swings in shield host for 5-up criticals, sustained hits, full wound rerolls. Which means that this dude will just like he'll cut a knight in half or whatever. Like the dude will eat. Which is cool. I wonder also if we're playing some reserve tech with these guys as well, because we can deep strike those units and kind of like do a thing where we play the wardens, right, as the bulwarks in the center of the battlefield. They're going to absorb a lot of fire and they'll probably eventually go down, but it's unlikely you'll kill the wardens before the blade champion at least gets in. Valerian does sometimes just like die to shooting because he doesn't really have that much. He's kind of slow and he doesn't really have like defensive tech against shooting besides what the wardens have already. The blade champion gets that advanced charge, so he's able to get in potentially. Then you have a rapid ingress the same turn where you're trying to make that push. And if you get the blade champion and Trajan in front of 2 Gladius grav tanks, that's a theoretically backbreaking amount of damage. I'm interested to see how Custodes do into like this knight meta. It's probably bad, right? Because I think knights are very good at killing heavy infantry. But Gladius grav tanks, man, they're so good. Especially once you are T11, a Gladius goes like super ham, right? Because it's strength 12 twin linked on the blaze cannon. So it's just wounding on 3s rerolling with with lethals and putting you on your invuln save regardless of what you do. So I feel like 2 Gladius grav tanks were like, it's a pretty reasonable chance they kill a super heavy, right? By themselves. And then like, Trajan will get $1
through super chat. List review for Tacoma open.
Hey Bryce, thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah, if you have a paste bin for the link, you can post in the chat, or you can like DM me on Discord. That also works. And we'll take a peek at it afterwards. Sometimes don't run Draxus to practice not having agents in teams. Oh, that's a good call, actually. Yeah, for WTC format where you can't duplicate factions, you can't take Draxus in if another faction's taking assassins. That is a good call out for that. I wonder if Custodes are the shining champions we need. I'm legitimately curious, actually, how they end up doing in that matchup. I bet that they hit so hard in melee. I wonder if they hit hard enough though, because they're almost always going to like trade equally with knights. They also get like super turbo stomped by Helverins. If you combo out the Helverins, they just vaporize Custodian Guard like instantaneously. Yeah, all right. I'm talking myself out of it. It's mostly Gladius grav tanks being absolutely insanely statted. And then you go from there. But this list is like very aggressive. I kind of like it. I'm gonna sneeze real quick, chat. Sorry. Oh man. Woo. There's also 2 units of 2 Alaris Custodians in here as well. So we can also play those guys as either an ingress threat or a unit that can hop into the opponent's backline and then like clear their backline stuff. So that's also kind of a threat as well. Plus, those guys will hit well above their weight class in Shield Host, thanks to the enhanced critical benefit that they get. Nice, chant. Good stiff. Go to ground is the best strat for Custodes. The Custodes, the best strategy on the Custodes faction is go to ground. I understand. I get that totally. Especially because they oftentimes want to just like run into the middle of nowhere. Sick. Should we talk about Necrons? The tie here was Necrons. To Rapu is a Necron player. And what are they playing? 4-0-1 with an Awakened Dynasty. Running Illuminor Seraz, Imitate the Stormlord, Translocation Overlord, triple Plasmancer. Let's get some mortal wounds, my guy, with a Veil of Darkness. One with a Veil of Darkness. Wonder if they're going to be in Immortal squads or if they're just by themselves. We have a triple Scorpic Lord. One has an Agic Dermal Bond, Technomancer with Netherrealm Casket for stealth. They are in Immortal squads. We called it, chat. Let's go. So the Plasmancer will give you enhanced criticals, so you get critical 5-ups. The Immortals will give you wound rerolls targeting enemies and objectives. So this 5-man Immortal squad, this unit, the math for this unit is crazy. It's a 5-man Immortal squad with a 55-point character attached to it. The Plasmancer is 55 points. The Plasmancer itself contributes 2 damage melee attacks with rerolls from the Immortals. They also do they also do 2 mortal wounds on average at this before they shoot or during the shooting phase at some point. This is basically like no restrictions to it. You just target something 18 inches invisible anytime in your shooting phase and deal mortal wounds. I wonder if there's got to be a sequencing rule that says you can't do this like in the middle of an attack sequence, right? Like ping for mortals. There's probably a rule in there where you can't interrupt attack sequences with activated abilities, but it's just any time in your shooting phase. It's just like such a wild timing. We have that weird thing with like the Lord of Change where it has a damage amp for itself that's activatable anytime in the shooting phase, which means that you can like do it after you've selected your targets and after your opponents use stratagems. It's like super bizarre. You just have to do it before you make any attack rolls. It's the only restriction for it to work. Super weird. And this feels very similar. But then they give you 5 up critical hits, and then we have the Immortal Squad, which is shooting the Tesla weapons. So those guys are each shooting 2 shots with sustained hits to 5 up critical hits. So we're averaging, on average, 4 criticals out of 10 shots of a unit of 5. Which means that we should fully convert basically all of our attacks, and then they have full wound rerolls if you're on an objective as well. So, or excuse me, more than that because we're in Awakened Dynasty. So we get +1 to hit if we're led, right? So they are, we should be averaging like 12-ish hits and then full rerolls +3 shots with wound rerolls for 2 damage +2 mortal wounds for 125 points on a unit that could potentially, if we're on the guy who can teleport, deep strike around the table or just come out of reserve or whatever. So like the value proposition for this Immortal Squad, plus their OC2 because they're battle line infantry. So the value prop for the Immortal Squad with the Plasmancers is like super high. They cost basically like what many other factions pay for their utility, but you get just like so many little extra bonuses. We've got a Flayed 1 unit, a Canoptic Scarab Swarm for scoring some points. We have a bunch of plus they can get +1 OC AP, excuse me, from a Luminar's Heroes too. I forgot about that guy. Fuck, holy shit. Just do it. We're doing everything with this thing. It's been a while since we've seen like the mini Immortal units everywhere. That's kind of cool. We've got Canoptic Scarabs. They can get +1 OC from Saraz or from the Technomancer, so they can do actions and stuff. Locust Heavy Destroyers. Canoptic Wraiths for the dude with the stealth to hop into. Double Doomsday Arc for backline shooting plus a Reanimator. Pretty good stuff. Pretty neat, chats. I like it. I like it a lot. Bryce has DM'd me the list, so we'll talk about that next. Yeah, I don't know. Nice to see. I guess it's not like the normal warrior stuff that we so typically have been seeing from Awakened Dynasty. What's interesting, all right, here's another interesting thing, is that we're running triple Scorpic Lord, but we have no Scorpic Destroyers. So the Scorpic Lords are just slumming it. They're just ground pounding by themselves. The Enagic German Bond guy, I understand, but the other Scorpic Lords, it's very rare to see them on their own. But the amount of mortal wounds this list generates is kind of crazy, because each of the Plasmancers is going to do 2 on average, and then each of the Scorpic Lords is going to do another 2 to 3, right? So you could just kill an entire vehicle with only mortal wounds on average out of a regular round of shooting. Plus we have like devastating guns on the Canoptic race, the particle casters. So there's like a lot of save bypassing that this army just sort of passively does, which is kind of neat. I'm interested to see the independent Scorpic Lords on the battlefield, because I like the idea. They do pay a lot for their profile because they are like T7 wounds, and I think that kind of arbitrarily increases their cost by at least 15 points. Their melee profile is like sort of whatever. It's 4 attacks. It's 2 plus strength 10 AP 3 damage, which is good. Don't get me wrong. but it's only 4 attacks. We're not like swinging a like Rage Field Warrior or Space Marine Captain here, where he attacks 9 times and then sustains or whatever. He just attacks 4 times and could just miss and do nothing. But he's also doing mortal wounds, so that's cool. So like 90 points feels like I don't know. It always feels like a little bit too many for these guys, but I don't know that up top. Like the comparison, I guess, is like a Slaughterbound. The Slaughterbound doesn't do mortals, but it does have Devastating by itself without having to use a Plasma Sight, which these guys don't get. And it has like 3 times as many attacks or whatever. 9 attacks, or twice as many attacks. -1 damage for twice the attacks when you're on the go turn. He's a little easier to kill, but he's a little faster. And he's 5 points less? That feels like the closest comparison. I don't know. But obviously being able to regenerate them thanks to Awakened Dynasty is a big deal. So using Eternal Revenant to bring them back to life so they can get another round of swinging in if they die is pretty neat. You have a Tyranid question, Popolo. Is a unit targeted by the stratagem, the Tunnel Network stratagem, considered to be in reserves for the purposes of no deep strike within 12? So when you are set up, the Tunnel Network thing to go into a tunnel and come out another tunnel is called a repositional effect, or the unit is called a repositioned unit. Any repositioned unit, which is the term for an effect that picks you up off the battlefield and then places you somewhere else on the battlefield. Any repositioned unit counts as a reserve, triggers all normal reserve rules. So anything that says you can't arrive on the battlefield as reinforcement within X distance or whatever, or anything that's like when you arrive from the battlefield, do a thing, those all count. The Moloch ability, I think, is an exception because that explicitly requires you to deep strike, which you're not doing. You're not deep striking. You're arriving using Tunnel Network, not using deep strike. But anything else like Omni Scramblers or whatever will trigger. Yeah. You essentially like go into reserve very briefly and then come back out. I saw that question a couple times. It might be actually worth making a video on, because I've seen so many people ask how those exactly work. All right. Speaking of Tyranids, let's talk about B-Rice's Tyranid list. And then I think that's going to be our show for the day. I have a game scheduled on Twitch in about 20 minutes. So that's going to happen. I'm playing Salamanders, chat. I'm playing Salamanders against Thousand Suns. We're going to see if we can beat that Thousand Suns list with our Salamanders. I did play a very depressing game with Salamanders over the weekend, but I think it was a particularly bad matchup and mission, and so I don't feel that bad about how it went. All right, let's talk about this list. It is an invasion fleet. It's double Broodlord. Okay, interesting. All right, we're off to the races already. Double Broodlord with a perfectly adapted Hide Tyrant, Cytals, and Monstrous Bone Sword Lash Whip. I don't dislike the perfectly adapted Hide Tyrant because one thing that this does is it gives him a pretty hard late game. One thing that you've noticed if you play Subterranean Assault is like the Hive Tyrant profile becomes like hyper consistent because he full rerolls everything, and perfectly adapted kind of does that. He gets sustained or lethals, which is better, I guess, because he can also just like adapt the missed Bone Sword attack that he rolls when he rolls a 1 out of it, and then he just gets full rerolls on the wound roll as well. So I kind of like that guy. Adaptive biology is more common, but perfectly adapted, I think, is like a good side grade. So it's Death Leaper, double Broodlord, Biofort, double Exocrine, 2x10 Gene Stealers, 2 Maleceptors, 2 Lictors, Zoanthropes. I'm gonna level with you. I do not like the Zoanthropes here. If we had 1 Emissary, double Maleceptor, double Lictor, I was like, where all the points go? And I think it's the Gene Stealers. I don't know if you want 2 10-mans. I feel like the Lictors are good. I think you would probably prefer to have a Neuro Tyrant over Death Leaper. The Neuro Tyrant, it makes your Shadow is like so much better. It basically doubles the effectiveness of your army ability by itself. One thing that I had a conversation with Sam Pope at one point, because I was like, hey man, I noticed you play your Neuro Tyrant super aggro. You just play this like fucking battle Neuro Tyrant. And he was like, yeah, dude, I want, and it's a little less relevant now, but it's probably still worth talking about. He says, I want an outlet for my command point on top of one from the Hive Tyrant. I want my free strat. And oftentimes what the Neuro Tyrant will do is either, if you play him by himself, which I don't think you should do in this list in particular, but only because you have Zone Thropes. If you play the Neuro Tyrant by yourself, your opponent, if they want to interact with it, they would have to wildly overcommit and then be killed by my guns. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. And so he's like, so you can play kind of an aggro Neuro Tyrant with a position where it can see like the center objective, and then you free strat off the Hive Tyrant to Overwatch with it, just like top of one, and you give yourself a pretty reasonable opportunity to kill like a utility unit that's scoring an objective top one. And if your opponent loses a unit and doesn't score, the game might just be over. I was like, it's fair. It's not a good it's like not a good chance, but it forces your opponent to play around it early. So you get that support, like that effect. You can support the Zoanthropes. Now, I don't think you want, if you've attached to Zoanthropes, I don't think you want to play them super aggressively because your opponent can use them to kill the Zoanthropes with their guns, which is definitely a situation where they'll take the trade. But I think that the Zoanthropes really need the +1 to hit to be worthwhile. So I would cut probably 5 Gene Stealers and Death Leaper for a Neuro Tyrant. I think that's where I would go. 5 Gene Stealers is a 75 points, right? And the Death Leaper is 80. I would love to get 10 Hormigons in this list as well, but I don't know where we find them, besides dropping the enhancement here. I think that would be the other consideration, because you don't have, besides the Gene Stealers, which are very expensive, you don't have a ton of...
Peaches the Destroyer donated $5 through
Hey,
Super
Peaches,
Chat.
thank you for the Super Chat.
Late to the vid but wanted an opinion. Could SW Beastslayer detachment be the answer to Knights etc. with lethal everywhere? Also aggressor's good there?
I've seen that opinion a couple times. I'm not sure. I think that it's like definitely a consideration, but I don't I don't know if the numbers are there, because there's not much else. It's not doing a ton else besides like buffing Wolfen, I guess, which is like, I think we did do some math with Wolfen. And Wolfen are actually like kind of a good option, but they don't necessarily need lethal hits. So the answer to your question is that I don't know, and I don't think I have enough experience with the new Space Wolf stuff to really like give a hyper concrete answer with the new Space Wolf detachments. I should say I played a lot of the Codex, but I played it in Gladius. So like, like you get reactive moves, but we're missing like advance and charge, and the stuff that has like a lot of internal synergy. I don't know if it like super needs the detachment ability. So it's like whether or not you value the lethal hits. It's like that's a start like thunderstorming outside my house right now. It's like really loud. I'm not sure you value the lethal hits like super highly unless you're building for it. What's the best thing to receive lethals? It's like a high impact, like low strength attack, right? Which isn't really where you want to be to fight like knights to begin with, in my opinion. So I don't know. Like I think even with lethals, like I don't know if lethals changes the math on a lot of these units, right? Is like what I'm trying to say. Like maybe it does, but I feel like you'd want to be sourcing like with twin links or something to be more consistent regardless, and that's probably just available in like a better detachment. So it's definitely worth play testing, but I don't know if I'm prepared to say that I think it's like super good. Moving Thunder Cab without advance and charge. Well, you get the I guess it's true. I was gonna say you get the move through walls strat, but it's move through 4-inch terrain features, which is fucking so bad. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the lack of advance and charge is definitely a pain. I feel like you could play this in Gladius and be like more happier with it. But it is army-wide lethals, right? Which I think is like a level of efficiency that you don't necessarily get otherwise. So like every attack is almost like a sort of +1 to wound. But like, here's the question. Are you better off just playing compliant and getting +1 to wound the normal way versus playing a detachment that doesn't have that much synergy with you? I guess you also get +1 to wound for a command point, but we can do that in Gladius Task Force. This like largely just feels like Gladius Task Force, but without the I guess it's like Devastator Centurions maybe is like the kind of the cool thing because they get rerolls and then they have like strength 8 guns that benefit from lethals quite a bit. Maybe that's fine. Or like Predators. Is Predator Destructors the way to go? And Storm Speeders or something? Is there like an MSU like vehicle build? That doesn't feel like they're quite efficient enough because you're kind of like hoping to spike dice, which is not a great place to be. If the +1 would have found affected shooting, well, that'd be really strong at that point. I mean, you get like kind of a +1 wound off lethal hits, right? That's like oftentimes averages out to +1 wound. So I don't know. Thunderwolf Cavalry going to damage through with lethals. Yeah, the problem is delivery, I think, right? Is like delivering non infantry. I think, in my opinion, the biggest use case of this effect is to buff your ranged attacks. Like giving your lethal army-wide lethal hits for ranged attacks is a big deal. And then you also have a +1 to wound for when you need to get stuck in the fight phase. Plus, you get like good Space Wolf characters who are good at fighting. Which means we're like maybe trying to play like Annihilators or Destructors with the Iron Priest bonus or something. But it feels like we're like trying really hard to do something that's like kind of feels worse than just playing like Firestorm or something. Ash for playing at Warhammer for 2 days in love with it. Hell yeah! Welcome to the community. Hope you're glad to hear you're having a good time. Why are you curious about aggressors with a captain? But like you'll never get aggressors in though is the problem. Like, because you have no advance and charge, you have no advance and shoot, or I guess right. They're just like vibing, and so you have a move 5 like unit that's just on the battlefield. No deep strike, nothing. They just like wander around. Like it. I don't know. Yeah, I like just go back to being like, why we could just play, we could just play Gladius and put them in like, and do like a fire discipline combo on them if we wanted to. Space Wolf striving for something higher than strength 5. Yeah. I mean, that's why they have the rest of the codex, right? Like Space Wolves themselves have a little bit of like struggle a little bit with it, but like I think this dude is a godsend, right? Because if you're playing Space Wolves and you haven't played an Iron Priest with a Predator Annihilator, it's fucking insane. This guy is transformative to the faction for sure. You have like random stuff like Thunderhammer Wolfen, I think are probably maybe a little slept on. We did a bunch of math with them into Knights, and it was good. I didn't want to say it was like great, but it was okay. The problem is the 2 attacks. If they were 3 attacks, this unit would be a slam dunk. But anti-monster, anti-vehicle helps like a ton get around the low strength characteristic. And then like you have dreads and stuff, but I think it's like largely predators. So I wonder if there's a universe where you play like 3, like just a bunch of predators and call it a day. That's where I would sort of be considering. Anyway, chats. That's a good question. I definitely think it's worth playing. I think Agent X has been playing it on the Discord for a little bit. I don't know if he's having success. I know he was like building it for Death Guard to play against like the MSU Death Guard lists. I don't know if he's had success with it into Knights. I don't know what his win rate is. We got Arjack over here, anti-monster, anti-vehicle, but he's a little bit. He's only 5 attacks. So I don't know. Wolfen with lethals and +1 to wound do 30 damage in Beastslayer. Regular Wolfen, they don't need +1 to wound if they're like these Wolfen. That can't be right, because the +1 to wound for these guys don't do anything. So I wouldn't spend that strat. No was a play for sure, but the restrictions made you lose so much interest in building lists. Yeah, it is weird. It does feel weird that they like are kind of like internally inconsistent. So like the Storm Shield Wolfen unit, they average, if you don't have Oath, right? They average, it's 20 attacks. They should get 14-ish hits, rerolling 1s. So you probably net like 2 more or so. So you should get like 16 hits. Of that, you hand them 11 saves. They make on 5s like 4 of them. So you're doing 14 damage. No, 21 damage minus Feel No Pains. If you Oath, they probably kill a Knight. So I feel like this is, I think these guys are the answer. They're also kind of cheap, right? Like Thunderhammer Wolfen are sort of like weirdly inexpensive, if I remember correctly. But maybe I'm like maybe I'm thinking of incorrectly. Do they go into transports? They can deliver them with Land Raiders too, right? I wonder if it's just like 30 Wolfen and Gladius or Stormlance is like the actual truth. Where's the Munitorum? That might legit be like the way forward. Is you just like laser cannon a bunch of like twin fucking rapid fire predator annihilators into something and like take wounds off, and then Wolf would just kill individual knights. Just go crack them for 20 damage and call it a day. Go home. Drink some mead. Wolfen are 170. Oh no, 200. Oh, they're 20 points a model. So they're not super cheap. That's not like wildly expensive. They're also really fast. But you get advanced insurance on these guys. They kind of go for days. So that's probably where I would end up. Oh, the math was with Oath. Yeah, okay. Oath and lethal, I think I could see it. Because the lethal isn't a huge bonus. The +1 to wound is literally worthless. It literally doesn't affect the math at all. But the Oath will probably add another conversion or 2. And lethals might add 1 more. So I could definitely see high 20s damage for sure after Feel No Pains. They take up 2 slots. Is that it just like on the Land Raider data sheet? That's unfortunate if true. But honestly, I don't think you need it. They're move 9. You'll get there. Oh, yeah. Wolfen takes 2. Yeah, it sucks. Womp. Womp, womp, womp. But we can just walk them. Move 9, advance and charge should be fine. How about 10 standard Terminators with a Librarian, 2 Psycho, and sustain from the Libby lethals? No, I wouldn't do it. No, no. That combo was good when we could Fire Discipline. When we could Fire Discipline combo out the standard Terminators, that combo was okay, but we can't anymore. That combo is actually, it's not good. I would not play the regular Terminators. I actually have a short. It's sitting on my hard drive right now. I'm probably gonna release it tomorrow, but I have a short talking about like why, like the disaster of regular Terminators. I don't. That's definitely not the way to go. If you're going for lethal hit like combos, like I wonder if there's like an intercessor build or something, or Grey Hunters maybe is like Grey Hunters the way to go. They only shoot. Oh, they're rapid fire. Oh, they're 2 base rapid fire 1. They don't. If they had baked in hit rerolls, they'd actually be kind of goated. But it's wound rerolls. Is that good? Maybe Grey Hunters is like enough volume. It's AP0 though, which sucks. So we're handing our opponent, if you shoot an oath target, and we fish for lethals, you are rolling like 55 dice on 6s, so you should get like 11. And then you're wounding another like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I guess it's only like 5 damage from a Grey Hunter squad with Oath. Yeah, I don't know if doing it with AP0 weapons is gonna work. We would need some other ways to go. The aggressor squad with compliant Oath does a lot. A fully comboed aggressor squad with Fire Discipline combo hits for like 18 or something, but that's with the +1 to wound Oath. You can't do that in Space Wolves. That's the only way I would consider like trying to push it with the AP0s, but that's only because they also get AP +1 AP from their own stuff. Yeah, worse Stern Guard. Yeah, just take Stern Guard for sure. The downside is that I think the Stern Guard, it's not that they get worse with lethals. They don't not appreciate the lethals, but the lethals are not very valuable for them because they're wound rerolling devastating anyway. So a lethal hit is not super, like not that much more effective than just another regular attack. Ash, thanks for the kind words, man. Appreciate that. Hope you have a good one. All right. We'll finish up with this with the Tyranid list. That was a good tangent to talking about Beastslayer. I think I like in my opinion, the Stormlance or the Gladius Wolfen is the way forward. Stormlance or Gladius, you also get, well, I guess both of them. But Gladius, you get ranged like options as well. And Stormlance, like you could give like assault to the vehicles and stuff, which is also I think pretty good. So and plus you get synergies with Thunderwolf Cavalry, which are like one of the greatest utility units in the game. They're basically just like Outriders with upside, which is kind of amazing. Do you know Space Wolf get access to Terminator captains? Space Wolf have access to. Put this on full screen. Here's how it works: the Space Wolves get access to every vanilla Space Marine data sheet. Every Codex compliant Space Marine data sheet, you can take any of it. You do not have to take only the stuff in the Space Wolf Codex. However, you still have to abide by regular attachment rules. So anything like a Space Wolf Terminator unit can only attach things that say they can attach to Wolfguard Terminators, for example. So you can take a Space Marine captain, a Terminator captain inside Space Wolves, but that Terminator captain can only attach into Terminator squads and Terminator assault squads. He cannot innately attach into Wolfguard squads. The only attachment for Wolfguards are currently, I think, Logan and our Jack Rockfist. Because none of the other stuff says they can attach. So And that's kind of the complaint with the codex is like the data sheets are good. The problem is that they don't mesh with the existing Space Marine data sheets because you can't cross pollinate. Like you can't attach Space Wolf characters into codex compliant units, and you can't attach codex compliant characters into Space Wolf units, which is really weird. It was a weird way to build the codex, but it does allow you to build characters who are independently way more powerful than Space Marine characters. Like the Wolfguard battle leader is like wild. He's crazy powerful. He has basically 2 attachment abilities and has 7 melee attacks and 6 wounds. A monster for like 60 points. I say that Ragnar got weaker. Yeah, I mean, he was like the best guy. Ulrich got like situationally stronger. I guess not. Well, maybe not really. Ulrich, I guess, also got a downgrade. But Arjak's better. And you get that fucking Iron Priest who's incredible. All right. So yeah, the to wrap up the discussion here, I think I was saying that my advice here would be to cut Death Leaper for the Nero Tyrants. That costs you 35 extra points, so we would have to drop a unit of Genestealers, or 5 Genestealers, a half a unit of Genestealers for it. That would give you 40 points to spend. If you cut Perfectly Adapted, you could get a Termagant unit, I think. That costs 15 right now. Yeah, you could get a Termagant unit. I think that... Oh, maybe we're 5 points off, actually. Actually, we're 5 points off of everything. Oh, you could get a Pyrobor. That's probably the correct call. If you were comfortable with cutting the second Genestealer squad, I would probably do that. I admit that I'm like wildly biased against Genestealers because I'm not sure that I see it, but I understand that other people have success with them, so I think it's a playstyle thing. If you were open to cutting that, you could take a bunch of disruption pieces, and I think that would help you quite a bit. But as it stands, I think that's all I would do before, like without sort of gutting the core of the list, which I think is going to be like sort of this stuff and this stuff. So that's what I do. That would be my thing. I think that the Nero Tyrant, if you're playing the Zoanthropes, the Nero Tyrant gets extra bonus. I think the Nero Tyrant's so useful as a baseline that I would always take him. And then if you are playing the Zoanthropes, he makes the Zoanthrope unit so much more powerful. That I think he's definitely worth taking. Issue with Genestealers that require so much game knowledge to do well. Rather just use something that's easier to play with. I mean, maybe. My issue is that they're slow as fuck for a Tyranid unit. Like, if you can't hit something with their scout move. Well, first of all, if you can hit something with their scout move, you're probably trading down, right? Because it's like a 200 plus point unit or a 150 point unit for them and a Broodlord, 155, and you're killing like 5 scouts with it. So it's like, what am I doing with my life? I could have done this with a Lictor. But the other thing is that they need to be in a position to get that close anyway, because they're only move 8, right? So like your opponent has to basically like walk into their threat range. So like I think you have to they're just like this counterpunch unit, which feels like kind of we're paying for scout on a unit that doesn't really use it that well because they can't cross the board to get something good quickly enough. Outside of Vanguard Invasion, it feels like they're built for Vanguard Invasion and playing or Vanguard Onslaught, and playing them in other detachments is just like leaving value on the table. But I don't know. If they were move 10, I don't think I'd have this problem. But the move 8 like is so awkward. The problem is that I don't know. It's just the issue of early codex stuff. Or I'll just take Raveners. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, chats, I think I'm late for my game, so I have to hop off. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Please come hang out with me on Twitch. I'm about to go live on Twitch in about 10 minutes here. Let me throw a link to my Twitch into the chats, and we will be over there. So, cheers, everybody. And I will see you over on Twitch in like 10 minutes after I set up my game. So have a good one. Goodbye. And I'll see you tomorrow as well. Same time, same place tomorrow. No, an hour later, because it's going to be normal game time tomorrow. All right. Cheers, everyone.